Thank you for watching this video in which I'll show you how to configure the AR system for a successful D2P deployment. In the following demo, I'll show you the steps that you need to follow before deploying an AR system or ITSM D2P package. You'll often deploy D2P packages when you're applying a patch or a hotfix, so these instructions will be very important. The first step is to correctly set your Java home environment variable. And that's because with many of the hotfixes and patches from BMC, you're going to be asked to deploy the payload. And to deploy a payload, you have to run a utility on each of the servers in your server group. And that utility is a Java utility, which requires that the Java home be set. Now on Windows, it sometimes makes sense to just set a system environment variable so that Java home is always set. On Unix, you have a choice. You can either set it in your profile or you can set it right before you run the utility. So let me show you really quickly how you would do this. On a Windows environment, and first of all, you might want to go and just double check of where the location of Java is. And in my case, I'm using Java 1.8.241, which is right here. I'll copy that path into my paste buffer. And then you can just right click on this PC, do properties, and go to the advanced system settings, environment variables, and you can set it here under the system environment variables. And we'll just set Java underscore home, and here's the path. If you have multiple Javas and you're not sure which one you should always use the one that is being used by AR system. And if you're not sure which one that is, then you can look at the AR monitor config file. On a Windows box, the AR monitor config is just going to be in your AR system conf directory, and you can look at the AR monitor config, and there's an environment variable in here called BMC Java Home, and this should be the same version of Java that you're going to set for your Java Home, except for Java Home, we're not going to include the bin. Now that I have set that environment variable, you can say OK, and that's all I really need to do on the Windows environment. Now let's look at a Linux environment. The first thing I might want to do is just validate which Java home that AR system is using, and I can go to etc-AR system, look for my host name, and then look in the AR monitor config file. So we'll do more, and I'll look for the environment variable for BMC Java Home, and I can see that this is what it is. Again, I'm not going to use the bin portion of it, so I'll copy that out. And now in a Linux environment, I don't need to necessarily set this permanently, but at some point I'm going to be running a Java-based utility, and I'll want to make sure that that is set before I run the utility. So I might just simply do an export Java underscore home and copy that, and now I'm ready to go. So that's all I need to do. The important step is that I am using the correct version of Java. Make sure that you are using the same instance of Java, whether it be the same version. Make sure you're using the same instance of Java that the AR server is using. All right, now let's go to the next step. Step 2 is to validate the monitor AR server GUID properties file. This file is automatically generated by the AR system server, so we are likely not going to edit it or create it, but it's possible that we'll need to delete the file and have AR server recreate a new one. So let's take a look at this. On my Windows server, this file is in the Program Files BMC Software AR System directory. Let's see the file here. Open it up, and you can see all it really has in here is a one line monitor.guid and then some value. And this value is going to be important in a later step. Now for Unix, this file is going to be in the AR system bin directory. So I've opened up an FTP client here, and we'll move to the AR system bin directory, and here we'll see the same monitor AR server GUID properties file. If I open this, you're going to see a similar line. So that's all we need to do in this step is validate that the file exists and make a copy of the actual GUID value. Okay, now let's move on to the next step. The next step is to validate the AR system monitor form. So we're going to have to go back into our browser, log in and we'll open up the AR system monitor form. Do a quick query on this form. And what you expect to see in this form is every AR server and mid-tier with their appropriate host names. And for each one of these, you will have a GUID value right here under this monitor ID that should match to the monitor GUID file that we just saw. So here's a copy of the properties file that we just opened, and you can see here that the monitor GUID in the file is the same as the monitor GUID on the form. And that's what we want to check. And we'll do this for each server in the server group. Now, if these monitor IDs were different, what we would need to do is delete the file from the file system and then restart AR server. That will cause it to regenerate the GUID value and repopulate the data on the form. So that's all we need to do for this step, is just to make sure that the monitor GUID from the file is identical to the one that's in the form. Step 4 is to check the centralized configuration for the server plugin alias setting for the AR Migrate plugin. So go back into our browser, go to Home, and then open up the administration console. And from here, you can open up the centralized configuration. Now we want to look for the AR system server, and you'll do this for each of your servers. And next we want to make sure that there's a server plugin alias setting for the AR Migrate plugin. Number 1, we want to make sure that it exists, and number 2, we want to make sure that it's set to the correct port. Now in my case, I'm using the default port of 9999 for the primary Java plugin server, so this value is correct for me. In your case, if you don't see a line like this, the server plugin alias pointing to AR Migrate using the correct port and the correct host name, then you'll need to add or modify that line. And now that we know that AR server is pointing to the right plugin for the AR Migrate plugin, we need to make sure that that plugin is actually loaded. So from the browser again, we'll go to the admin console once again, and this time we're going to go to the plugin server configuration. From the plugin server configuration, we'll make sure that we're looking at the right plugin server instance, and this is based on the host name and the port. And in my case, this is the right host name and the port. So from here, I can just click on plugin configuration. And what I want to do is look on the left-hand side in the plugins. I can see that the Migrate plugin is listed here, so it is being loaded by this plugin server, and that's all I needed to check for now. Since most of the D2P packages that BMC ships for patches and hotfixes include a payload, it's important to make sure that the file deployer is running. So our next step is to check to make sure that that process is being launched. So to do that, let's go back to our browser. From the main menu, let's open up the Remedy Management Console and then the AR System Server Group Console, and we'll look for Manage Processes. From this list, we'll see all the processes that are running on each server in our server group. And what we're looking for is the file deployer. I can see in my system that the file deployer is listed, and it's listed as running for each server in my server group. When you check this, if the file deployer is not listed for some servers in your group or they're not running, you'll need to make sure that they are before you start trying to deploy your package. While you're looking at the Manage Processes screen, it's a good time to check to make sure that your Java plugin server is configured with enough memory. When deploying packages, we recommend that you have 3 to 4 gigabytes of memory allocated to your default Java plugin server. So when I click on the plugin server here for the server that I'm going to connect to, I can see here that I have 4096 megabytes, which is fine. If I have a server that's less than that I'm going to be deploying on, then I'll want to change that, and that's easy to do from here. So I'll highlight the particular Java plugin server that I want to modify, and then I'll click on the update operation, and I can open up the command window here and simply change the memory size from 1024 to something like 4096. I'm going to do that. I click OK, and then click on the Go button. It will make the change and restart the plugin server. So that's an easy way to make sure that the plugin server has enough memory in order to perform the deployment. The final step that I'm going to go through today is step 7, which is to check your Tomcat configuration. We want to make sure that when you're attaching the deployment package, that Tomcat is configured to handle the large size of the attachment file. So we'll need to log into each of the individual servers that are going to be running the mid-tier from where we'll be connecting and modify the Tomcat properties. So I have mid-tier running on a Windows environment, and so I'm just going to use the Apache Tomcat configuration application. From here, I go to the Java tab. I want to ensure that both the initial memory pool and the maximum memory pool are set to 4 gigabytes. Once I've done that, I can click OK, and then I'll just restart Tomcat and that'll be fine. So that's it for each of the 7 steps that I wanted to walk through today. Make sure that you run through each of these steps and ensure that they're all set properly before you try to deploy a large D2P package from a patch or a hotfix from BMC. Please visit the BMC Remedy and Discovery site on YouTube so that you can see other related videos, and hit the subscribe button so that you can be informed of future videos. Thank you for watching.